Welcome to the Matuska Taxidermy Supply Company's Thursday afternoon live, Facebook Live. Nice day in the neighborhood again.
It is. It is
beautiful
nice
weather.
Our summer is winding down.
It is.
Very
it
nice.
is. And just like always, the tourists are starting to show up and for another action-packed weekend. And it'll prove to be an eventful summer.
Yep. Yep. I think one more weekend left of the official summer, Labor Day weekend, and then we get our happy little town back.
Yeah. If you joined us the last couple weeks, we started on the Bobcat project, and I think we've done a Bobcat project before,
Yep.
So they're going to get to see a couple of them.
Yep.
Now, we remember, I think in the first session, we took one of our stock Bobcats, compared it to what the customer wanted, started making some cuts in it, and putting it together. And as you can see, last week I think we started foaming the cuts, and we made a little bend in him, a little graceful walking down, and this is what we've ended up with so far. And we still have a little bit to go. We got to correlate his legs to the base a little better, and we have a little facial work and a few little alterations to do, but this is basically going to be the pose of the Bobcat. Now, we did that from just a stock form, so you could have reordered, paid shipping to send something back, paid shipping to get something back to you that still might not be any farther ahead than you were. So don't be afraid to, if something isn't exactly like you hoped, to make it into that. It just takes a little ingenuity and kind of follow what we did and take it apart and put it back together.
And we started with a pretty nice fit, so we kind of altered for pose, or they could go the other direction, start with the pose and alter for fit. And
he's got a great, the thing I like about this pose is he's got a real graceful curving, walking out at you. I just think that's kind of going to be kind of pretty in the overall scheme of things. Now, one thing whenever you're embarking on a project like this, I'd have to say one of your most important things is a measurement sheet.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is just one of our measurement sheets, and it shows, we made notes like he was 34 inches, and after that we put over the hair, just in case there's any discrepancy. And if you're working with a real winter raccoon, that might make 3 inches difference, in a circumference, or a fox or a coyote. And what you're not using that measurement, you're using a carcass measurement. So if it's over the hair, kind of make a note, because if you're a little shy of that, that might be a reason for that. Or if he's too tight with the measurement you had, it's because you measured over the hair. So take notes and that sort of thing. This is just a lot more than the supply companies ask for. They ask you for a nose to eye usually, and a length and a circumference, maybe two circumferences. The reason we don't ask for more or offer more is because you would never be able to line up all the measurements that's on this sheet. So if you take them, write them down on the paper like this, make your own little sketch if you want to, buy our measurement sheet book if you like to do that, but fill out an entire measurement sheet. We even do links of the bones, like from to the wrist to the elbow, from the ball joint of the shoulder to the scapula, things like that. So take those kind of measurements. Then when you get your mannequin, compare those. That's really important. If anything doesn't fit on this Bobcat, which we're pretty sure it will because we already test fitted, but if anything doesn't fit, the first thing we grab for is our measurement sheet and see what doesn't jive with our measurement sheet. This is, don't lose these. These are like golden. They're very, very, very important. Another thing, casts. We like to have casts. This is a big old Bobcat cast that we got from Gary Zahner. And
that's a nice one.
Just casts like this, you can make them yourself, and we've always, I guess we did on fish, we did make some reference casts and things, and it doesn't differentiate much between a fish and and a bobcat or a coyote or a fox. But these are very, very valuable to hold in your hand and just compare the ears to how you're doing the ears on your mount, or eye position, widths of the eyes. Even though you get a mannequin from a quality supplier, they're not always as accurate, or that animal might not be as accurate as the animal that you're working on. So something like this is pretty helpful to have. Even the artificial cast noses that a lot of companies offer, those that are made from an actual, freshly deceased animal. And like our deer nose, there's excellent reference, something you can hold in your hand, and you can sculpt those nostrils, and those two are awful helpful. There's a lot of people, a lot of companies out there that offer ears, like really competition quality ears, and though most of them are very thick and cast, but it shows you the anatomy of an ear, really well.
Very important. And on the subject of reference, you've got, that's 3D reference. We've got some flat reference too.
We showed you this last week, Atlas of Animal Anatomy. We really, truly don't. You could mount 1,000 bobcats, maybe not, 100 bobcats, 100 bobcats, and you're still going to pull out this book every time.
Yeah, and you can see how much
very
use
handy.
Our book has gotten.
Yep, we're losing
detachable pages for
but it's got,
20 years of use.
Front poses. It's got, I'm going to let the pages fall. It's got the front of the animal in the skeletal, as well as the musculature. It's got side of the face, and we're looking at an African lion, but the anatomy is still going to be very similar enough that we can use it and benefit from this.
Yeah.
Walking away from you, you look at this. It's got nice pictures of the anatomy of the legs. I think in here it has great feet on cats as something that most people struggle to get very, very accurate. And here's how the claws retract, and it's all kind of a mitten of fur at the end, but it's really not just a glob of clay in there also. So you're going to want to refer to something like this. And I think there's some, I know you can find them at shows, and there's different companies that have really good, you mentioned it, we need to make some cast feet.
That'd be really nice, really, really nice. There's a lot going on in the anatomy of those feet to make sure that the claws attach. And if you look at the feet of a cat or a dog, they're usually so precise and so dainty when they're walking, and they show so much expression just through the position of them. And if you get that wrong, it can really translate through the attitude of the animal.
All right, we've got quite a few people tuning in. Fred Burtz would like to know, how would you measure the bones, etc., when someone just brings you a skin?
You don't measure the bones. I would say measure the skin. It's like somebody bringing you a dress and making a woman. Yeah, a little bit similar to that.
But you can still look at proportions. Mm-hmm. If your skin told you that it was a 1 3/4 face and maybe a 10.5 inch neck and a 33 inch length, you could go from there to your mannequin and kind of look at some of the proportions and try to extrapolate from there. I think you might be able to, but it would be a guess when you're just looking at that.
A good word, that's the only word to use. We encounter this a lot, African lions and leopards and life-size things, animals from Alaska where they're skinned out, bears and things. Yep. All you get is the skin, and it's kind of hard to tell when it's green, because especially the African animals are folded up, salted, and dried hard. So we don't know what we have till they come back from the tannery. Yeah. And when they come back from the tannery, they are smaller. I mean, we can get them back to the original size, but the tanning process, because they're dry, does not lay out like a nice wet hide. So what's required is to soak up that hide, stretch it for proportion, and then get out the catalog, pick a size that you want. I always like to stretch as far as we can for width.
Yeah.
Just take go for length and width to start with.
Yeah.
So a Bobcat, for instance, if you stretch him for length, you're going to get, he could have been a 40-inch Bobcat. He'd been 36, 38 for sure. But you don't want a weasel.
Yeah,
So
right.
stretch him for width, and you're going to get about 18 or 19 inches. Then, without letting that width narrow up, go ahead and stretch it from the tip of the nose to the base of the tail, and see where that lands you in the measurement sheets. Most of these companies, the proportions are good anymore. You know,
Yeah.
years ago that wasn't the case, but mostly now the proportions are good.
Lots of them start from casts. So
Yes,
from
yes.
In the case of ours, we started with a carcass cast. So those bone lengths should translate from the length of the animal to the length of the forearm. So that might be one way that they could get to it.
But it's an educated guess. You know, you're gonna with
Yeah.
practice, you're gonna know what's too long and what's too short. And if you get a mannequin like we started with, and you think you're 4 inches short, if you stretch him out, you're gonna end up with a wiener dog. You know,
Or wiener
if you cut a chunk out and shorten him up,
Yeah.
he's just not gonna look Bobcat-y.
Yeah.
So be careful what and where you take out,
Yeah.
you know, your ad. That it?
That's it for now.
Okay, today, and the other thing I think you were pointing to, we have some great Bobcat reference books, and I think these are Phil Wilson photos, and we have close-ups. This must be the, this is the all-round. This is the close-up Bobcat book. We have a big selection of reference books like
yeah.
this, and
Mandy's worked with some tremendous photographers to.
I mean, look at the ear poses on that. Couldn't be better.
There's some great stuff. Just little observations from there.
So that combined with this and this, and a good form to start with, and it's going to yield a much better animal than if you didn't have any of this stuff. We have a lot of tourists come through and want to, you know, see our shop, and they always, I mean, the most common question is, what's the hardest thing you've ever done? And I always say the same thing. I say the hardest thing to do is the thing you know the least about. And if you don't have all of this, you do not know as much as you think you do.
You're at the mercy of that. You never know.
Okay, so we have things to do here. Where do you want to start? We got to put leg rods in. That was something we told you last week. A lot of times on our life size, because we're going to be moving arms, articulating legs, we don't want to work around leg rods. So a lot of times we will leave them out. We'll ask, you know, call the supply company and say, you know, we want to order this sheep or whatever it happens to be. Don't put the leg rods in. And a lot of times they'll just send you the leg rods so you have them to use, but they don't put them in the foam. And that allows us to cut like we did here. You can cut and move and bend at the joints, and we can put the leg rods in later. And we did that with this. We had our supply company pour the Bobcat with no wires in it. So that makes it a little bit easier for us to pose him, and putting the leg rods in, or wires, whatever it happens to be. I'm sure when we show them, it's going to look really hard. We'll make it look as hard as we can, but it's really a simple process. So do you want to do that? Should we put a...
Yeah, I think we've got...
Let's put one in this
lots of
front
little-
foot. We don't get carried away because we've got to change some back legs here to make them correlate to the base yet. And so let's just put one in this front foot.
Yeah, we've got just a little screw here in the back just to hold him while we were positioning him. So just going to turn that and bring him down. And there he is.
And now, any of you that have ordered a mannequin before, you know that anytime you start cutting into foam and making tuck grooves and things like that, there's a wire right exactly where you didn't want a wire, or a big old rod. And we have had to cut through lots and lots of rods before in the past. So this way I can put them where I want to put them, and I don't have to put them where you're going to cut into them and get mad at me. We basically want a wire coming right out. I'm going to come a little bit out the base of the foot because we're going to make these toes out of clay, I think, right?
I think so, yeah. I think we talked about maybe taking those toes back
And
off.
we can do a better job than the foam. You'll have to shape the toe, each toe individually, and by the time we get him mounted, we're going to have broken most of those toes.
Yeah, if they remember from anybody that's done these, from taking those toe bones out, those bones are teeny tiny in diameter. So if we were to sculpt those feet correctly, we'd have little bitty tiny bones. So
when we get to the mounting process, we're going to reconstruct the toes out of clay.
Yep.
And another tip for you, and we used to do this with school when we tanned a lot of our life-size animals, leave your toe bones with the skin and tube them out and use them to shape your toes. Works really, really well also. Okay, and I think we're just going to use a 10 gauge wire. Should be plenty big for, he's going to have 3 feet anchored on the base, right? And I'm going to attempt to bend a wire, have it run right up to his elbow, bend it up into his shoulder, and we're just going to sink it down in there. And you can either foam it in or Bondo. If you're ever worried about strength of your leg, Bondo is a great way to go. If you're ever thinking you're going to move that leg again, Bondo is not the way to go. You're going to want to go with foam. So this one, we're pretty confident it's going to stay like that. Does that sound good?
I think so.
And you can bend wire with, doesn't matter what you use, whatever's handy for you. Vice grips. I a lot of times use a little wrench. I'm going to leave out about 3 or 4 inches I can cut later. I'm just going to bend that. Good so far?
Yeah. And you're just trying to keep the wire toward the middle of the thickness of the part?
Yeah. So I'm not too close to the side walls?
Yeah. And this is 10 gauge annealed wire, is that?
10 gauge annealed.
Yeah.
And you have the choice of annealed or galvanized. This day and age, you might have no choices.
Wire can be unpredictable.
Wire's getting very difficult to get. The annealed is nice to work with. It bends. It doesn't have the spring in it. Thank you. Now, we could have gone up here and made a big old loop and buried it in with a spade bit and had a huge anchor point in here. Really, this foam is plenty strong, and the only thing we need the wire for is the narrow part of the leg and then the attachment. Now, if you help me hold this, I'm just going to trace on the leg. Good?
Yeah. Good.
Good?
Yeah.
So far? Now.
Ready?
watch me rip the leg off as I'm trying to show them this. I've got a Dremel. I'm going to hold it in my lap, so you might not get to see quite as good. I've got a Dremel and I have a cut saw. What are these called? Can't remember. They're a cut saw bit. They come in a lot of different varieties, but this one's just probably an inch long and an 1/8 inch diameter. It's very aggressive and their carbide work really good. Anytime you're using grinding tools on little skinny legs that are going to break, it is very helpful to drag it rather than push it.
Yeah.
Now, going through the crust is the first thing that I want to do.
Might have to lift that up and show them what we
Might what?
have to lift that and show Kate what we did there.
Okay. Now, what I did was take the cut saw bit. I had to use 2 hands to steady it and drag it. If you go nice and slow, it works really well. If you go faster, if you push it, you're going to get a real wobbly cut. And I made a nice even cut all the way down to here, and then I actually stopped, and then I poked a hole out the bottom for the wire. So I think I might run over and blow this out with the air.
Yep, sure. And that's a good tip too, because anytime you're working with the foam, it creates a lot of dust. And when you're foaming 2 parts back together, it's nice to get them completely free of all that debris so that you get good adhesion between your parts. Now we're going to take this wire, and if everything worked, this should fit right down through that little hole, a fancy little hole you put in the bottom of his foot.
Is that the right end, do you think?
Looks like you sharpen that a little bit. Or knock the burr off of it anyways.
How'd they do?
Looking good.
Almost. Got to put a little kink here. Now, if
Screw.
I'm going to get one more little tool here. Aha. Is it all the way in?
I think I got her tucked in there.
Okay, now would you stick a T-pin
Yep.
to hold it in there. Just go right through there. Perfect. Then one more. Worked pretty good, didn't it?
It did.
Usually things on camera don't work so good. Push it a little more. Good. Okay, now those T-pins now are going to hold that wire in. Now can you zoom in on that and see our wire? And if you want to, you could put this on your base and make sure that it's going to, drill a hole
Good
on your
idea
base
to-
so you've already got it.
Yeah, that would be a good idea to.
Okay, now
sure to-
foam would be just fine to hold that into place. We like to use auto body putty as long as, like we said, you're not going to alter it.
Now we talked about cutting that leg off. Do we want to cut? We want to leave some Bondo short of that and cut through there,
Or will we be
above?
deep enough?
Yeah, we go right up above.
So we'll be all right?
Yep. So if you were, in this case, we're thinking we might remove this leg to make, so that we can slide it through the skin. If we're able to cut this leg up here, we'll stay above the Bondo. But if you were taking the leg off any lower or extended your rod any further, you'd have to make sure that you make accommodations for that.
Now, the options are endless as far as, like you're talking about, depends on what kind of cut you had, what kind of mannequin you have. In the old days, we had flexiforms where you could, the arms were all bendable and you could stick them anywhere you wanted to. Lots of different methods of mounting something. Now we just have a case skin, correct?
So far, yep.
And with our case skin, and our form came with no leg, the legs were separate. You were able to stick the legs in,
Yep.
stick the body in, connect the legs inside. Now we've foamed them all together and changed the pose of all the legs, so we ruined that whole concept, you know.
Yep.
So now we're forced to either cut the legs off again,
Yep.
which you just talked about, or to cut him open all the way.
Yep. That would be your other option. You could cut him up the back of the legs and lay him completely open up the belly. Or you could dorsal cut him, maybe increase your legs and still slide the legs down through. That would be options. It depends upon your comfort level of sewing, how much you want to sew versus how much you want to fight with assembling things inside the skin. Some people are great sewers and don't mind that and would rather just lay him open and put him back together that way. And other people hate to sew and would do anything to keep from having to sew.
There are talented people, sewing is an art.
Yeah.
And there are talented people that can sew like a machine. I mean, beautiful, beautiful stitches that nobody could find. Now remember, a bobcat, even though he's pretty furry, it's very even, and it's not like a coyote, you know, which has a lot of different lengths of hair. And if you get hair caught under the stitches, it's probably going to show. So not only do you have to be able to sew really good, you got to be able to sew without getting hair in the stitches, which is kind of hard.
You're kind of talking about down the back where those hairs, those guard hairs are pretty even. Belly hair on a bobcat is a little bit
Real
more forgiving.
fluffy, yep.
Yeah, fluffy, and so hiding those stitches strategically can help you there too.
Okay, now I want to put auto body putty in that channel that I cut, and the auto body putty is not going to pour. So I would like it a little bit on the runny side.
Is that water?
No, I'm sorry. This is polyester resin. Thank you for reminding me to tell the poor people. Poor people that have to guess in between our instruction. Polyester resin is the glass in fiberglass. Your boat, your Corvette fender, your motorcycle gas tank is made out of fiberglass, and this is the glass portion of polyester resin. This is basically a putty form of that. We call it Bondo, but it's a generic term. It's auto body putty, and that's what they fix the dents in your vehicle with oftentimes. I mix the two together because one is a putty version of that. This is a liquid version of this, for simple terms. And then it needs a catalyst to set up. The catalyst, I maybe don't have.
No, I can grab you one.
Oh, I got it right here. I'm sorry. The catalyst is cream hardener, and they recommend an inch. I think we talked about it the other day. An inch per golf ball size. Mm-hmm. You can put in more if you want it to speed up the set time. And we don't want to wait too long, so I'm going to put a little more in.
And it comes in different colors. It's all basically the same. Whether it were blue or white or red, I don't think the set time's any different.
We have blue and we've had red, and we like the white, especially in our rock work. We do a lot of artificial rocks and seams and things like that, so the white is pretty helpful. Mix it really, really thoroughly so make sure it gets down in there, that it don't have any spots that don't get catalyzed.
And that's a good tip for you that haven't used Bondo before. Using the white hardener does not change the color of the Bondo, so it's harder to tell if it's thoroughly mixed. If you haven't used it much before, blue or red will really show you what's mixed and what's not.
We have a lot of people that order supplies from us, and they get something that they've never ever used before, and they will say, I've got this big diorama and I poured this in there or that in there, and it's not setting up. Have you ever used this before? No, this is the first time I've ever used it, and it's a elaborate customer piece. When you get a product that you're not familiar with or have never used, do a little test on it. You'll really be glad you did. We do a lot of tests. We get products, we test all kinds of stuff before we ever use it on a mount.
Some of our stuff stays in testing for a long time.
Now, I'm sure we're going to have to talk a long time because I put a lot of resin in there.
I remember a story that you've told 100 million times, but a good example of not testing a product, the gloss.
I had a fella call me, and he said, what do you gloss your fish with? And at the time, I was using an automotive gloss, like a Deltron, Delglow, or something like that. And no, Polytranspar made something very similar. And so he got it from Polytranspar, and he said, it's not setting up. And I said, did you put enough hardener in it? He said, hardener? What do you mean hardener? I said, didn't you get a big container and a little container? And he said, yeah. I said, well, the big container's your resin, the little container's your catalyst. He said, he's a little bit into the controlled substances. He said, whoa, man, I thought it's because they couldn't all fit it into the big container. They gave me a little extra. And he had a catfish which never set up.
happens. That went fast.
It did go fast. We got it
Yeah.
in just in time, didn't we?
Yep. Perfect amount of story time.
Okay, now you're gonna let this gel, and if you catch it at the right time, it's gonna shave off there with either, you can either use your rasp like this, or your knife.
Yep. Yep. And if you haven't, again, we say a lot, if you haven't done this or imply that several people haven't, we know that probably 80% of the people watching have, but we do have a lot of first-time viewers.
Yep.
And Bondo in this state is kind of rubbery. It makes it a really easy carve. You can see how easy that carves away. But it's very fragile now. So if you were to twist and put any pressure on that, you could break the integrity of the Bondo. So do be careful, sharpen your knife, use nice sharp tools. But like when we do antlers, when we set antlers, this is the most important time to hold them very, very still while it's in this kind of gel form. And it's starting to set up nicely now.
Does that mean you gotta hurry?
How easily that, no, we're good, we're perfect. You can see how easily it carves away, and it'd be a perfect time for your rasping, sanding tools now. Got the big stuff away, and shaves really nice and easy. We make a lot of stuff with Bondo in that time.
Use Bondo every day.
Yep, and take advantage of this time. It's really easily rasped when it's in this state, and you can do some fun stuff with Bondo.
Now, once you do this, taking the circumference down on that leg or making it longer or shorter is going to be very, very difficult. So make sure that that leg is the size that you want before you put any leg rods in.
Yeah.
And you showed us that last week.
Yeah, really good time. Don't forget your T-pins because that Bondo will.
Because they're glued in.
Yeah, we'll glue them in, but right now they're easily removed. Don't forget them. Perfect time for your cuts all rasp. This has got to be the best tool in the shop.
Now, we did two things. One, we put a wire in that's going to index into we'll put a hole in that log, and it's going to index into the hole, and we'll be able to fasten them in place. And two, now he has a strip of fiberglass putty hardened in his leg. That leg is very, very strong and won't break as you're mounting him.
Yeah, the reinforcement there is an added bonus for sure. And there's some little contours here. This stuff stands so easy, rasp so easy right now. Don't be afraid to go right across your muscles and make sure you don't have hard ridges. Yeah, I think that sanded really nice. Yep. Yep.
Now that's about like factory.
We talked about that last week.
Okay, now this is still soft, so be careful with this for 15-20 minutes. It's going to be rock hard within probably a half hour or so, but that rod's in there. It's never going to come out. It's as good as, if it were poured in there.
Yeah.
Now we will do the same thing with this leg and the hind legs. I think we're going to adjust these just a little bit, but we'll probably drill a hole in that branch, stick him down on, and then you're going to want to, anytime you work with leg rods, you want them perfectly parallel to one another.
Yeah.
They have to be parallel. Don't have one coming out this way, one coming out that way. That's a terrible struggle, especially on a big animal, to try to get the leg rods in.
Parallel and ideally perpendicular to the ground, so it goes straight down into your holes.
We've got Michael Sears, and Michael would like to know, is there any fillers that don't smell as strong as Bondo?
If it doesn't smell like Bondo, it probably doesn't work.
You could use
the
mache
maches and the plasters are reasonably odorless.
Yep. Yep. Different setup times. They don't have some of the same qualities. I don't think you would sand and rasp them quite as well, but you can smooth them with water. You couldn't. I think most of this taxidermy stuff, you've said it before, is where there's a will, there's a way. If you want to bad enough, you'll find a way to. You fill that in with Elmer's glue, I suppose, if you needed to. But yeah.
And then Angel on YouTube would like to know, could you do a quality job on the same Bobcat with 0 Bondo?
Sure. You actually, another great one, and you mentioned it before, is foam. You could make all your alterations and reinforce your wire with foam. Just the same foam that he's made out of. It's relatively odorless, good and strong. If you did that like we did last week, you could free pour it, or you could wrap it with stretch wrap, pour the foam in it. That'll add some strength.
Under pressure,
yeah, under that pressure, and you could make it go that way too.
Good. Do we want to show them anything on the tail?
Sure. Yep. Lots of little parts left. We've got head, tail, ears, eyes, all that stuff. We've got one nice thing is the flexible tail forms, and we've got a nice little bobcat tail.
You know, for years we would wrap our tails.
Yep.
And to wrap a tail, many of you know what that's all about. But we would take a wire, wrap it with thread. Take either cotton or tow or Excelsior, depending on what kind of animal it was, and build a tail. And then by wrapping it around and around and around, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and at different angles to divide your little poofs of whatever you used, you end up with a shape like this. And if you got really good at it, it went well.
Yeah.
If you took shortcuts and got sloppy, it looked like a lumpy old bumpy tail. And we had that with many students. You know, they didn't want to put the effort into, because making a tail really does take some time to make a nice tail. We have, what do we have? We got mountain lion tails, we've got bobcat tails, we've got a few different tails. But this is a flexible bobcat tail. You can put a little twitch in it, like bobcats twitch their tail. There's a wire in it. It's flexible foam.
And that's made from a cast of an actual tail.
That was a cast from a tail.
Yeah, it might even be a tail from that bobcat.
Could have been.
That's
okay.
And we've left the wire long too, because bobcat tails come in every different length. I've seen them really long. We've seen them really short. So this is just kind of give you a guesstimate as to where to start, and then I like to use the skin to tell us. So you may have, actually your best way is to take a measurement of the actual tail that you took out of the form. But
do you want to show them on that skin and see?
If you, like we talked earlier, if you received your skin and no carcass and don't have a carcass to refer back to, you can use the skin to get a good accurate idea of the tail. This bobcat is tanned and rehydrated, and this is what we have for a tail. Now, depending upon how he was dried, sometimes the tails will stretch out long and real skinny, and that's especially, I think, important to get the girth back to the tail. You can tell a mountain lion kind of
by the length
from the length and width of the tail. Little skinny tail, probably got it stretched too long. So with this bobcat, we're going to take and stretch this tail for width, and it is split all the way out to the very end. Sometimes people will tube them out. If it's tubed out, that's good and bad. There are some ways to go around that too, but probably have a little split in the end, in which case you would slide this through the tube. But what we're going to do here is start back at a point where we have enough girth in the end of the tail to make sure that we're getting the width at the base. And then we come all the way up into the body as well, and we're going to kind of test fit it back and forth along that skin this way until we arrive at a point where our tip is small enough but maintains as much girth as possible, and the back has got as much girth as possible. And that is going to be really close in length to what this tail is.
And you know what his measurement sheet says?
I don't. That's a good idea.
If it were the same Bobcat. The tail, this wise person who took these measurements said it was 7.5 inches.
Well, I'm pretty interested to see where we
Do you
come
want
out
me to
on
give
that.
you a tape?
Yeah. I'm going to say right there.
That's a handy thing. Whenever we do life sizes, we always tell people, take the length of the tail, just for peace of mind.
Now I have him at about 7 to 7.25. So I think we're really close.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think we're very, very close. And again, I stretched all for girth. If I were to pull this, I could easily change that just a little bit and get it down there. So I'm going to be about right here.
Want to
The
mark?
base? Yeah. Do you have a marker?
Tails are always incidental and they're an afterthought. And people mount the animal and think, oh, I got to do something for a tail. And the tail is pretty important, and anybody that's familiar with a coon or a fox or a coyote can tell that the tail doesn't look right. It's either stubby or it's too long and skinny, like you said. So that measurement on that measurement sheet is extremely helpful.
I might snip the end off here. And then there's lots of ways to install it on the mannequin, but it's pretty important to get it right, especially as you get into some of the bigger mammals. The transition from the tail to the backbone should be nice and smooth. A lot of times, that's one of the first things you can tell in the competition room. You'll watch life-size mammal judges go right down the spine and find the base of the tail. And well-executed tails, you shouldn't be able to find that transition. It should just be an extension of the backbone. And in this case, we're going to go to our mannequin here.
You want me to hold him for you?
Yeah, let me see. Maybe, yeah, do you want to run the tail? And I'll just hold him since he's facing that way. Hold him for you.
Okay, you're going to recess it a little
I was
bit?
thinking, yeah, there's about a 1/2 inch on the backside mark that we could probably recess up against there.
Do you want to bore it out? And I'll
Sure.
hold him for you?
Yeah.
And you can do spade bits or hand tools or anything you want.
Yeah, and so what we're going to do, we marked this. This is what was left on the tail itself. And we're going to take that up against this backbone and mark here. And I'm just going to make that. And we'll just take this out so that it sits down, and then we're going to drill forward, and we could bend this into a loop if you wanted to put a loop up into the back, but just going to cut that away. Tom's wondering if he's going to end up with as many fingers as he started
Not worried.
with. Something like that. Now that tail will sit right down in there, and then we can bore a little hole that will accommodate this. And if you want to, you can use the whole thing. You could use just a little bit.
Should I get you a bore machine?
Yeah, that might be good. I will shorten this. Anytime you put a wire straight in, just the nature of it, it tends to come back out pretty easily unless you put either a kink or a bend or a loop or something in it to prevent that and give it a little bit of grab. I'm going to do that just by bending this. I could have snipped that off and made it shorter, but we're just going to slide that right
Big
in.
one or little one?
But that one will work. And you can see on this tail we're down just a little ways. So this is the part we're going to countersink into the body like that. And so we're going to go right here in the center, keeping in mind where the spine is. And that way the tail is going to come off the body at the exact point of the center of the spine. And that's pretty important. So now we're just going to go in there like that, push it in, and you should have a really nice smooth transition on the back line there. Kate should be able to show that. And we can Bondo that in place. We might leave it off until we test fit and get it finalized, but that's how we would go about doing that.
You could sew up your tail now and slide this in and glue it in and just let it hang until you mount the animal and then plug that in.
Plug it right in, put a little Bondo in that. Yep.
There's a whole lot of parts that are going to go into this. You mentioned ears. We've got ears.
Yep. We've got ear liners. We've got the ears split all the way to the edge. So we're going to replace that cartilage with an ear liner. We've got to test fit those and make sure that those are going to...
And test fit everything. Don't get your Bobcat 3/4 sewed up. To tell you how I started, I shot a deer out in South Dakota, and first mule deer that I ever shot. And I was so excited to mount this fork horn that I ordered a paper form from Jonas Brothers, because we had two choices in those days, Jonas Brothers or Van Dyke's, and everything was paper.
Oh my.
And you don't sand paper, you don't build it up, at least I didn't. There was not foam. And I sewed up the entire body only to find out his legs weren't even in the ballpark of fitting.
Oh, well then what do you do then?
You start thinking about how you're going to patch it, and that goes bad too.
Sure. So we've taken and we're kind of skipping around, but we've done most of the prep work to the hide prior to tanning. So he's all split out. You can see that the ear cartilage is split all the way to the very end. The little notch here. Oh boy, John's gonna get
secondary
me for ear flappy do.
Oracle.
That has been that's been split all the way to the edge. There's a little flap that comes in front of it, and that is split as well. You'll see that that's not a part of the mannequin or the ear liner. So we are going to replace that. And I think somebody asked about that not too long ago on live. We're going to replace that with a clay or an epoxy material when we glue it in. But we want to check and make sure our ear fits in the ear skin.
Okay, now explain, because in all of our deer and elk and African animals, we take great pains to take the cartilage out. How come you left the cartilage in?
I left the cartilage in this one simply because when I slide this really thin, these are our thermoform ears. When I slide that in with the cartilage inside of it, it is still going to give me a very, very thin ear. I'm split all the way to the edge. The only thing I would gain is the thickness of the cartilage. Yeah, a 32nd of an inch and probably 3 or 4 holes that now I'm not going to have to sew. So in this case, we can rough the backside of the cartilage. If you want to take them out, more power to you. We would, a lot of times we do, but in this case, a Bobcat ear is fairly small, and we're not going to get a lot of shrink out of it. So we left the cartilage in, but now we're just going to test fit the ear liner in the ear skin. And important to note, Bobcat, Coyote, Fox, you're going to have this edge, and then you're going to have this pointy edge. And on ours, that ties into the muscle across the top of the head. So this will go on the inside. So this would be this ear here. This one would go there. I'm going to turn him back right side out. I just wanted to be able to show you easily.
If you have dogs or cats at home,
Oh gosh, yeah.
spend some time scratching their head and feeling their ears. It's very helpful, and it's as good, you know, or better than this to show you how the ear cartilage attaches to the top of the head, how the muscles, you know, are kind of an extension of the ear cartilage.
And your dog's going to like it too.
And the dog will like it too.
So this ear is going to go here, and you can see this is that extra little flap of skin that we talked about on this side that's all split out. And then we've got the notch in place here. So I'm just going to go through the mouth and slide that cartilage up into the skin like so. This feels like it's going to be a really good fit. Tufts are really important on a bobcat, so make sure you get your ear split to the very edge. I think kind of like fins on a fish, ear shapes are really, really critical to the animal. You can look at a bobcat from a long ways away and notice if his ears are too pointy or curled over and wrinkly, that stuff stands out. That will go there. This will come around, tuck into the slot. Yeah, that's going to be a great fit. And now that we know the ear fits in the skin, we can position this onto the mannequin, build the ear muscle, take it off and glue it in later. But that test fit, just like when we test fit the skin against the mannequin, is really important now, because if we had to change a shape or a length or anything, we could easily do that.
The nice thing about the thermoform fabric ears is if you wanted them back, or if you wanted them cupped more, or if you wanted them open more, we used to do it with hot water all the time. We put a little cup of water in the microwave and just put them in and bring them out and gently shape them, or a hair dryer. Don't get them too hot, or you'll never get them back to what they were. But they're very easy to shape. To put a little curl in them, ears back on a bobcat would be really attractive, with a little curl back on the ear.
Back. That's something I remember. You had some sculpted mountain lion ears, and you had a very aggressive ear, and that's pinched, really, really pinched closed and pulled back. Very different shape than if you were to take this stock ear and just rotate it back. Completely different attitude. So these are nice to make those alterations with too.
That was a lot. We did good today.
Did we?
I think so.
Good.
Now, while you're sleeping tonight, we are going to be busy putting leg rods in the rest of these legs. Just, we're not going to do anything different. We might change the shape of these so they conform to the rock a little bit. The tail is on. We might fill in some of these little pits in the body. We have screw holes and we have cuts. We'll get him correlated to his base, looking bobcat-y in a natural pose. Next week we'll probably show them, maybe, don't know how far we'll get, modeling ears and eyes. Maybe the start of the nose. We've got tuck grooves to make here yet. We're going to have to do some paw work, but little by little, we're going to have a pretty attractive bobcat.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really nice.
And it's nice being able to handle these now. I don't have to worry about that leg breaking, and that's as strong as it's going to get. The rest of these are hanging on by a thread for now.
They'll really, really wiggly.
All right, well, I think, is it giveaway time?
Giveaway time, and this week, is this what they get?
Yes, the boning knife. It's a semi-stiff curved
by Mundial, and this is what to start with, we carved all this foam off. Be careful, it's like a samurai sword. But you were using, you said, this is my favorite knife for cutting some of that stuff.
And including my finger.
You didn't.
I didn't, but I'm gonna someday.
You could have. But that's a great giveaway.
It is.
And the winner goes to Justin Mills.
Justin, be careful.
Yes.
Don't hurt yourself.
And make sure to like and share this video right here to automatically be entered into next week's giveaway.
Thanks for joining us. Next week we'll just proceed and more Bobcat.
More Bobcat.
All right, we'll see